All right, back for more. So in the other video, we addressed white balance. Now I'm going to select one of Scott Kelby's images that you can download from his website that come with the Lightroom book for digital photographers. So I'm going to select this one here, hit the shortcut of D, and go in to develop. All right, so let's zoom out and take a look at that. Well, that's got a lot of no zing at all. Right, so we're going to go through and we are going to adjust the exposure. Real quickly before we do, let's take a look at this basic panel. Thank you, Camtasia. This basic panel at the very top has got your white balance, which we covered in the last video, and it's got this section called toning. You can click the auto button and Lightroom will try to balance the image for you. And sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. So I can hit auto and you'll see automatically it looks better. But I want to know how I did that, right? So that's what this section is about. And I'm going to hit reset and we are actually going to use the sliders because these sliders in here have to do with corresponding parts of the histogram. So we start here. You'll notice when you put your mouse over the histogram, and the histogram again is a visual representation of all of the luminosity values in this photograph. So you have your whites, your highlights, your exposure, and you'll see if you move down here, that it's highlighting the exact tool that you would use. So if you're starting to edit a photograph and you're not sure how to approach the overall exposure, you can look at your histogram and do some troubleshooting. So right here, let's zoom in a little bit. There is no contrast, like there's no black. This is the first recorded pixel in this image. So if you look here and there's no black at all, and there's very few shadows. So first thing I would do, which is, now you see with the JPEG, it only gives you 3 options. I can just go auto with the white balance for now, and I'll probably have to come back and do some finessing once I get the exposure set, okay? So I'm going to go hover over this part of the histogram and drag it to the left. And what you'll see happen is it adjusted the black slider to -64. So once you get more familiar with this, you'll know how the histogram corresponds directly to the slider, and you'll be able to decide how you want to make decisions. The next thing I want to do is play with the shadows. So I'm going to drag that shadow slider down. So overall, it's starting to have more visual weight, right? You'll notice it peaks. We've got this peak here, and it could be clipping in the whites. So I'm going to pull that back a little bit. And look at what's happening in our sky. We're starting to have some detail in our sky. Where here, it's just blown out. I can bring the whites back just a little and then play with the highlights to see if I can bring in even more sky. So where it is totally blown out here, I was able to adjust the whites and the highlights to bring in more information. So you can see there's quite a difference, right? Very blown out, very low contrast. We haven't even adjusted the contrast yet, but now much, much better, okay? Then if you decide, you know, I'd like it to be a little warmer, you could always take the temperature up a little bit, right? Or if you notice any shifts where you think it looks a little green or a little magenta, you can adjust the tint. And these guys down here are presents, and they're finishing effects, all right? And we'll talk about those in the next video. But this is, you know, kind of the workflow that I'm going to have you guys establish. Start with white balance, and then work with this. Now let's go back to library for just a second, and let's see if we can't find another photo that could probably use a little more love. Let's grab this lady. Go to develop. I'm having a feeling that she's pretty blue. Yeah, and she's a JPEG, so I'm not going to have all of those options, but auto gets me pretty close. All right. Now We can see a little bit of magenta up here in the noise, but let's see if we can adjust the histogram and then go back and double check on our white balance. So let's play with the middle, the exposure. I'm going to take the midtones, just kind of push them to the left. Highlights, I'm going to bring those down. You'll see we don't want to get rid of that kind of cool glow to her hair, but we want her hair to be able to, to be able to see it. If we go to the right, it blows out, just blows out completely. So let's bring it to the left. And you'll also notice if you bring it to the right that you clip your histogram, which means that you are forcing that information off and you're clipping it. So we're going to bring it back. That's starting to look good. Now the shadows, there's a lot of stuff bunched up in the shadows. So maybe we can open the shadows a little bit. What happens with this image is it's noisy, noisy, noisy. So let's interrupt this lecture and address that. I think I'm going to drag this down a little toward the green because she still looks magenta. And you can see all of this visual noise. So if we skip ahead just a little bit to the detail panel and we go over here, you can see that there are two types of noise reduction. One is luminance noise, right? That luminance noise is noise that looks black and white. If I drag this up, it's going to help get rid of that. So let's look. So we can drag it up a little bit more. We don't want to go too far. We don't want it to look sloppy. And then color noise is actually when you see red, green, and blue pixels in an area like this. So watch what happens if we drag that up. It goes from here to here. So that's pretty cool, right? And then you can also adjust the detail and the contrast and the detail and the smoothness. So I'm going to make sure this is pretty smooth. Also, when you're doing that though, you want to make sure that you are not losing detail in the face and you're not smoothing out. If you go too far in the noise reduction, you can often kind of cause the image to look a little soft. We don't want to do that. I think she looks way better. And now I can also see where I need to go up and bring some of my whites down. Maybe some of my blacks. And maybe a little less exposure. So that she looks much better. So when you start editing, you work in this basic panel, right? And then in the next video, we will get to clarity, vibrance, and saturation. But now you know that you have detail. And the two types of noise are, again, luminance, which will appear black and white, and color, which will appear as RGB. All right.